Hey, welcome. Today we're going to continue talking about the European Middle Ages. We've previously talked about the fall of Rome and the Dark Ages, the growth of the Christian church, and feudalism. Today we're going to focus on the High Middle Ages, focusing on the Crusades. So the Crusades were military campaigns waged by the Western Christians. Remember, the church was split into East and West at this point, between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And the Western Church, the Roman Catholic Church, is going to send soldiers to the East and to the Middle East to try to preserve Christianity in those areas which are under attack by the Muslim Turks. So, as we talked about previously, the power of the Catholic Church grew during this time, and as it grows, there's more involved in politics and war. Then you have the Great Schism, or the East-West Schism, where you can see on the map here you split between Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox, and this took place in 1054. And the two main centers is going to be Rome and Constantinople, of where Christianity is going to be in each of these regions. Meanwhile, you have the Islamic Empire starting to grow and spread into parts that were once controlled by Christian leaders. Islam started with Muhammad. He is the prophet of Islam. He was born in Mecca around 1070, which, as you can see here, is in Saudi Arabia. And he began having revelations when he was 40 years old and started going around proclaiming these messages and began to attract followers for his religion. And then it started to spread. And on this map here, you can see the colored areas are the areas it spread to, mostly through conquest, but also through trade, pilgrimage, which would be like your spiritual journeys, and through missionaries. They conquered a lot of territory, and they built up an empire, an imperial structure over time. And from 632 to 661 AD, this is where you have the real expansion of the Islamic Empire under the first four successors of Muhammad. So you can see on the map where they've taken over parts of Old Persia, Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Northern Africa, and then also Spain and Portugal. So as Islam's growing in popularity, or the Crusades are going to develop as you have both Muslims and Christian leaders fighting over the same territory. So Muslim Turks were taking over land in the Middle East, including Palestine, which is considered the Holy Land, the place where Jesus lived and taught. But it's not only Holy Land for the Christians, it's also the Holy Land for the Jews and Muslims as well. And they're threatening to take over Constantinople, which was the center of the Christian faith in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and it's the capital of the Byzantine Empire. It's one of the wealthiest cities in the world. It's where Justinian built the Hagia Sophia. So in 1093, the Byzantine emperor, who is Alexius, as you can see in a picture here, asked for protection against the Muslim Turks, and he asked the Count of Flanders, but does not really get much of a response. Eventually, this letter is going to get to the Pope, and the Pope is going to call for the First Crusade, and this Pope at this time was Pope Urban II. So Pope Urban II calls for a holy war, a crusade to gain control of the Holy Land and take back land that was conquered by the Muslim Turks, focusing largely on Jerusalem. And the Pope really hoped that the Crusades would not only take back Christian land, but would probably increase his own power, unify the Christian church, which was divided into Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. And then he offered to forgive the sins of anyone who would fight, basically giving them this massive indulgence, which would turn into a basically erasing their sins and allowing them to go to heaven. Crusaders wore tunics with red crosses over their armor to signify Christianity, and despite being poorly prepared and disorganized, the Crusaders were able to capture Jerusalem during the First Crusade, and they were controlled Jerusalem temporarily until you have the Saladin conquering it before the Third Crusade. There is a second crusade. This took place in 1144 when Edessa was conquered by Saladin, who was the leader of the Muslim Turks. And the second crusade ended in defeat for the Crusaders and led for more conflict in the area. One of the biggest crusades was the Third Crusade. In 1187, Jerusalem was conquered by Muslim leader Saladin, and Saladin took over much of the Middle East and Palestine, including Jerusalem. So the Third Crusade was organized to recapture Jerusalem, and it was led originally by three of Europe's most powerful monarchs or kings: Philip II of France, Frederick I of Germany, and Richard the Lionhearted of England. And Richard the Lionhearted is the king featured in Robin Hood, with him being off to the Crusades while all this stuff is going on in his country. Here's a picture of Saladin, the Muslim leader who conquered much of the Holy Land, including Jerusalem. And Philip, as you can argues with Richard and went home. Frederick drowned on a journey, I believe when a ship crashed, and you can see Richard here is going to be the leader of the Crusaders during the Third Crusade, and he is going to have to go against Saladin. Both Richard and Saladin were considered brilliant warriors, and this ended in a truce in 1192, with Saladin having a major advantage of they already possessed the city of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem had these strong walls which would protect from an attack. So Jerusalem is going to remain under Muslim control. However, Saladin promised that unarmed Christian pilgrims could freely visit the city's holy places. The Fourth Crusade took place in 1204 to originally reconquer Jerusalem, but they did not even make it to Jerusalem. Instead, they went on ships and stopped at Constantinople and looted the city. So this is Christians attacking Christians. You have the Roman Catholic Crusaders attacking the Eastern Orthodox city of Constantinople, one of the wealthiest cities in the world at this time. And you have several more crusades. Each one of these was unsuccessful. Eventually, Muslims are going to gain control of much of this land, and this is going to end many things. In addition to this, you have the Children's Crusade. Children's Crusade took place in 1212, where you have thousands of children setting out to conquer Jerusalem. However, this is going to fail. It was actually led by a 12-year-old named Stephen Acloy, as you can see in the picture here. Most of these people didn't even end up making it to Jerusalem. In fact, I'm not sure any of them actually made it to Jerusalem. Most of them died of cold or starvation. The rest drowned at sea or were sold into slavery. So it was not very successful. The whole idea behind the Children's Crusade is they feel like the Crusades lost some of their religious fervor and some of their innocence. So they figured that having the children who were more innocent would help them, and God would protect them and help them win this war. In addition to these crusades, you have the Spanish Crusade. Spain was taken over by Islamic invaders, and they tried to drive out the Muslims, reestablish the power of the Christian church and the king in Spain. They had the Inquisition, which would torture people who they thought were going against the church, and eventually these people would confess. As you can see in this picture, they're being tortured, and then they have the pen and paper out ready for him to sign his confession. And if they did confess, they were most likely burned at the stake. Now, the Crusades had lots of effects. Feudalism was weakened. Kings become more powerful, so kings start dominating power again. You can see all the trade routes that happen toward the end of the Crusades, so trade and travel increases. With that, cities and universities grow, and things start to really turn for the better. And then the downside is there's a lot of fighting with Christians, Muslims, and Jews. It looks like the whole thing is going to end. The Middle Ages are about over, but then as we learn in the next lesson, there's a bunch of crises, including disease, starvation, and war, which are going to extend the Middle Ages even longer. Thanks for listening. Have any questions, let me know. Thank you. Bye.